Hello, can I get a sound check, please?
You sound excellent.
Thank you.
Mr. President, we are live. Yep. We're ready to go.
Great. Thank you. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Let's get the show on the road here. Tonight is a legislative meeting, but before we go into that meeting, we will have some committee meetings. First committee up is City Properties, Parks, and Recreation with Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Call to order City Properties, Parks, and Recreation. It is Monday, April 26, 2021. 6 p.m. We're all virtual. Everybody is present on the committee, plus others noted. I have no new requests for legislation. And for miscellaneous discussion, do I have anything from the committee?
Not tonight.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
Anything new with the skate park information yet?
Well, I do see Director Hunt on the line there. Director, do you have anything?
Yeah, we issued, I don't know if this is news to Councilman, we did issue, we have a TNM do our environmental reporting. We issued a phase 1 study to make sure that we weren't getting into any environmental contamination. There's just different standards for recreational and as opposed to like residential. So before we got into any construction, we wanted just to make sure we did our due diligence and made sure there wasn't anything under Decker Park that would prohibit us from maybe moving a little bit of soil. So that's the latest. TNM is in the process of launching that, and they'll probably be going out doing some homework on the site here soon. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trevor. Mr. Quick question for you. Is there any drawings or anything park yet? Any kind of designs or?
I'm sorry, it kind of broke up there, but I think you asked if there's any designs for any sort of a skate park.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we have one. Not sure if the mayor shared that with you.
No.
It's a little bit older, but there was a design that was done back in kind of like the mid 2010s. Like I want to say 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there. But I've shown it to a couple people that have inquired. I can share it with you as well.
Yes, if you don't mind, you can send me and our committee and also Mr. Patterson a copy of that too, please. Thank you.
And that's nothing definitive. That's something that was prepared,
right.
just so you know. It was kind of a brainstorming. So.
Thank you. Director Tracy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to let you guys know, speaking with the mayor earlier today, he was planning on sending out an update sometime this week about the skate park. So I'm not sure what all it's going to include, but he did mention that today. So there should be something forthcoming later this week.
You're echoing.
Councilor Angeloff, I see your hand.
Yes, I'd like to know how much money has been donated so far to the skate park.
Councilor Jaber, do you know of any private donations of?
Without any drawings or any names or anything on paper, we have not went out for any donations yet. I'm hoping after we get it going, our committee or a small group of us that will do like they did with the turf, get that going. Again, we received nothing yet, so I'm waiting to receive something so I can go be a salesperson and talk to people, talk to businesses, and talk to residents. When I did it on Facebook, we had a couple people who wanted to donate 1,000 here, 1,000 here, but I didn't want to accept anything personal because I want them to be straight to me through any kind of a bank account or through they want to do like Zoom, like a credit card. They want to send it out. I was like, let's wait till we get the drawings and we'll do some kind of account.
Thank you. Councilor Andrews again.
Yes, I think that has to go through the foundation, doesn't it? Any type of donation for that? I think there, something has to be set up at the foundation. And so if anybody wants to donate, it goes through the foundation and then you draw from that.
I believe once we get the clearance from the various reports, like Director Hunt said with the phase 1 study, I think once we get the clearance, that would be the time to set up something with the foundation. I think that's a good idea there to make sure that it's held in earnest. I think Councilor Favor's right. I don't think it would be right to collect any money until we have 100% green light. But yes, I do believe we should go to the foundation as soon as that green light turns on.
Yeah, I think we have to. We have to go through the foundation for donations, and in that way, you know, they could use it for their tax write-off or whatnot, and the foundation has that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Coburn, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This question is for either Mr. Tracy or for Mr. Hunt. Are the plans that we have the ones that we kind of got when we had the grant go through for this back in 2010?
I thought
I
they were
don't, I don't remember any grant.
7 years old. Sorry.
We had Shane had applied for a grant for the skate park, and we turned it down because we didn't have a proper place for it at the time rather than taking it. That was when I first came on council that I remembered there was something like that going on, that we turned down the grant for it.
Thank you, Councilor.
Mr. Heidig. Thank you, Chair. Is this something that could be at least partially funded or donated to through CDBG funds?
Director Hunt, that would be a question up your alley.
Most likely not entirely for the park. There might be some elements that can be funded, such as restrooms and things like that, but it would take some creative thinking. So to answer your question, most likely this would not be funded by, we can't depend on CDBG as the source to fund this.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Chair.
Anything else from anyone? Seeing none and hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion, sir.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:07.
Thank you very much. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mrs. DeBevick.
President, I'd like to bring to order the Public Welfare and Safety Committee meeting. I'd like to bring to order the Public Welfare and Safety. It's Monday, April 26th. It is 6:08, and we are virtual via GoToMeeting. All members of the committee are present, as well as all others noted. We have a couple of requests for legislation, and we have pending legislation that we will be voting on this evening. The first piece of legislation is a request for a city council resolution to honor the retirement of Lieutenant Christopher D. Hawksworth, fireman paramedic, on April 30th, 2021. I did not see a letter requesting this. Chief Kirby, are you on the line?
I am. Yeah, I did submit a letter. I can go back through my emails real quick and see if I can find it.
Okay, I'm looking one more time, so give me a minute. I just didn't notice it first time or second time through, but it doesn't mean that it's not here.
Chair, I think, at least in my packets, I think it was attached to the actual committee paperwork.
It's not attached to mine.
Okay.
No, I'm missing that. I have the request from Mrs. Miller, but I do not have the request for this piece of legislation. And that's okay. I'm not disputing it. I mean, we can just, Chief, just literally just, if you can send that to me in an email. I'm not concerned about not having it.
Okay.
That's no problem. But I just can't really add on to the discussion without it. So does anyone have any questions or remarks about this piece of legislation? Or Chief Persley, do you have anything you want to add?
I can answer any questions. So real briefly, Chris and I got hired together back in '92. He got promoted to the rank of lieutenant in '04, and he is retiring after 29 years with us. Over the course of his career, he's received several commendations for his actions, and we will greatly miss his experience and sense of humor, I might add. So, Councilwoman DeBevick, I just found this, so I will email this to you right now.
Awesome. No worries, Chief. No worries. Thank you. Thank you for your input. Do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I will make a motion to call for this.
Motion. Second.
I'll second, Mr. DeBevick.
Second made by Mr. Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We have another piece of legislation to call for this evening. We have a request for legislation from Lisa Polish-Miller, Law Director of the City of Barberton, to authorize the mayor to enter into a one-year agreement with the City of New Franklin for prosecutorial services. I spoke with Mrs. Miller today, and generally this is a contract that we enter into. Oh, she's available, so maybe I can just let her explain.
So typically we enter into a 3-year agreement for this contract, but I had asked New Franklin if we could have a 1-year agreement this year so that we could be on the same cycle with the other communities, and all of the agreements will expire at the same time. And because New Franklin was just a year off, and it would just be easier if we were all on the same schedule. So they agreed to do that.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation?
Chair, I have
Yes.
one. This is just a basic question. This is for us to provide them with, like the court stuff. Is that what that is? Or sorry, yeah.
Oh, no, that's okay. So we serve as prosecutors and PLA, police legal advisors, to the other cities within our jurisdiction. So we provide prosecutorial services for the City of New Franklin.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I will make a motion to call for this.
Motion made by Mr. Greer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And this passes.
Carla, could I just 1 second? I'm not sure that, are you guys voting on Lieutenant Hawksworth's resolution tonight?
No, we are not. We were just calling for it.
Okay, so you're going to vote on that? 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Other pending legislation that we will be voting on this evening is an ordinance number 35/2021, titled Foundation Grant Request Smoke Detector Program, an ordinance approving the submission of a grant application to the Barberton Community Foundation in the amount of $910 for the smoke detector program. and declaring an emergency. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? Okay. The next piece of legislation out of safety this evening is resolution number 36, 2021, and it's titled Commendation Officer Steve Coburn. And it's a resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton to honor and give public recognition to Officer Steve Coburn for his courageous act of heroism on March 24th, 2021. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? Okay. The next piece of legislation we will be voting on is ordinance number 39, 2021. It's titled Enter into Contract. It's to enter into contract with Tim Lally Chevrolet, Inc., authorizing the City of Barberton to enter into contract with Tim Lally Chevrolet, Inc. in the amount of $105,806 for the purchase of 2 Chevy Tahoe SUVs and 1 Chevy Silverado pickup truck. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? And the final ordinance out of safety this evening is ordinance number 40, 2021. It's titled Appropriation Fire Department. It's an ordinance appropriating $24,741.28 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the fire department capital budget of the FEMA fund to purchase additional emergency communication equipment and declaring an emergency. And as we know, this is the remaining funds from a FEMA grant that we received. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation?
Yeah, Carla?
Yes.
Okay, that is going, was that referred to finance?
I believe so.
Okay, I thought so. It's not on my notes that way, and yeah, I was pretty sure it was. I just double checked it, that's all.
I believe it's not on my notes that way either, but I believe we did refer that to finance. So
Yeah, it is. Okay, just
Thank
double
you.
checking.
Okay. Does anyone have any miscellaneous discussion for safety? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin. Oh, sorry, Mr. Greer. Apologies.
Oh.
There you go.
I always get your last names confused. Okay. And seconded by Mr. Griffin. We are adjourned at 6:17. Thank you.
Thank you. Up is rules, marketing, and development with Mr. Griffin.
Rules, marketing, and development. I would like to call this meeting to order today, April 26, 2021. We are meeting virtual. All members present and all others noted. Tonight we have one request for legislation. A letter from Trevor Hunt requesting an ordinance approving the fiscal year 2021 CDBG annual action plan budget. Emergency wording requested to comply with federal timelessness. Do I have any remarks on that?
Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Chair. Director Hunt, could you kind of summarize some of this here for the council with the allocations? I have it in front of me here. I just want to, I see code enforcement, public service, housing rehabilitation, economic development, capital infrastructure, acquisition, and demolition.
Yeah, I'm happy to share with you, and I know this is calling for it for a public meeting. I think for May 3rd, a week from tonight. But I can certainly share with you some of the details. you may remember this past year that this actually didn't come through till July because of the COVID situation. I think we're up roughly $3,000 to $4,000. Our allocation is up $3,000 to $4,000, and that's probably just adjusted for inflation. Our budget isn't changing drastically from what we had planned for in the past. There's a 20% admin cap. There's different cap restrictions. You'll see, I think there's 115,000 for infrastructure. And that is up slightly from last year. That's the biggest change. And I don't think, I think we just kind of deducted, very insignificantly out of the other pots of money to try to boost the infrastructure pot there. So, yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions. That was the largest change from last year.
Mr. Greco?
Yes.
I have a question for you or for Mr. Hunt. Generally, this is more detailed, the budget. So from the public service, the $64,277.76, is that generally where then victims assistance and mobile meals and those kind of social needs items are funded?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, so can you share with us the breakdown of those needs and how they're funded?
So I have that information here somewhere, but I'll have to send that out to you in an email, because that way you can see it all on paper.
Okay, I appreciate that. I feel like this budget is very general compared to what I'm accustomed to as the CDBG budget. So I'm just curious as to how things break down in comparison to last year. Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Do we have any more remarks?
Yes,
Yeah,
Chairman.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I believe we're going to have a meeting with a breakdown on that next week.
Yes.
And I'm sure they'll go over all the details of this and break it down. And that, I believe that's before our meeting. So we'll have that next week, all the details.
Okay, so tonight we still need a request for it, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, do I have a motion to request for this?
Mr. Griffin, I have one more question. I apologize.
Okay,
For
Carla.
are we doing one reading on this? And if so, have we had our 3 public hearings, and when were they?
We haven't had any public hearings yet, have we?
If I may talk.
Chairman, I
We
believe
had a public hearing. We had a public hearing at the Planning Commission on Wednesday, the 21st of April, and the second public hearing will be May 3rd in front of City Council, and it's only 2 public hearings.
Did I answer your question, Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I thought it was 3.
So we don't have any more questions. Could I get a motion to request this legislation?
Mr. Griffin, so this
Yes.
is one reading with emergency wording, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Before I make a motion to call for it, I would like to see the breakdowns, because I will call for or make the motion to call for it, but without those breakdowns, I'm very skeptical. And I know Director Hunt has them, but without that in front of me, I wait to see the May 3rd meeting to see whether or not I could move to approve it, but I will make the motion to call for it.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Colburn?
Aren't these things that we have to have done in a timely fashion to turn them back in so we can have the money? Isn't that why
Yes.
we are only doing one reading?
Yes. Mr. Hunt, how much time do we have?
We're on the tightest schedule as possible due to the release of fund dates, and it's not our fault. It was from the federal government. So, you know, the schedule we're on, we reviewed this with Holly Miller at the county. This is the best course of action forward.
Okay, so we would be voting on this May, what, 10th?
May 10th would be correct.
Okay. So is everybody in the committee?
Mr. Chairman, Director
I have
Miller.
a question.
Yes.
Was there anything, so you had a hearing on this at the Planning Commission yesterday? Or what's the date?
It was last Wednesday, 21st.
So the breakdown, the budget with all of the breakdowns was over a week ago, correct?
Yes, we shared that information.
With whom?
All the Planning Commission members and the general public that was there. I think there was one member of the general public.
I think we should have got an email from that meeting.
So let me make sure I understand this. You had that budget with all of the breakdowns over a week ago to the Planning Commission, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And when did this request for legislation come to council?
Last Tuesday.
When did you present that information to the Planning Commission?
On Wednesday.
Did they receive that on Tuesday? The Planning Commission? Did they receive a packet on Tuesday?
What are you asking? I sent that out to Planning Commission, I think, the day of.
Well, I guess I'm not clear as to why council would have received a request to approve a budget that the Planning Commission received a budget broken down. Council did not receive a broken down budget, and you're asking them to pass it.
No, I'm not asking them to pass it. That's for next week. I only put the request for the hearing in.
This is a request to call for new legislation, correct? So that is not just a request for the public hearing. Am I mistaken?
And there might be some confusion here. I don't know what Lori sent you. I thought, Lori, what did you email council on this?
I put it on this committee's agenda with copies of the email that I got, all the copies of all the emails that I got from you, plus the memorandum that you sent. I printed out all the attachments, and it's all stapled to the back of the committee agenda. I even printed out my email to the Beacon Journal and the Barberton Herald that there would be a public meeting to show that I've already informed the press about it. It's already on the calendar for the 3rd, posted to the webpage.
Right. I think that what Trevor and I are kind of asking in a different way, what is specifically the request for legislation that Shorter is calling for right now?
The answer to that is a public hearing on May 3rd to introduce legislation.
Not for an approval of the budget.
No.
Okay.
I thought that was clear, but sorry if it was not.
So what I have here, requesting an ordinance approving it, 2021 CDBG annual action plan budget is wrong.
Right, I think that's why that's what I heard. And so my concern was that the budget was not submitted. And then there was a question about the public hearing, which is what what Director Hunt was saying. So I think that there were two calls for two separate things. And I think Director Hunt was saying it's only for the public hearing, but I think Councilman Griffin was saying it was for the budget. So I think we need to be very clear as to what the call is for.
Well, that's what I'm reading off my sheet, request for legislation that says for the budget.
What I have is a memorandum to Mr. Griffin
Yeah.
to call on the 3rd for the ordinance approving the budget. That's what I took it off of.
Lori,
Okay,
I have the memorandum that I wrote
to approve the budget for the committee of the whole.
A public hearing. If I can share my screen, I can show you what I requested before.
One as well. I got them all at the same thing.
So point being though is that it is a request for a public hearing on Monday, May 3rd, and that's the request for timeliness. To meet federal timeliness guidelines or standards, we need a hearing on Monday, May 3rd. So.
Okay, so this is what we're doing. The City Department, Planning Department, we'd like to request a public hearing on Monday, May 3rd, 2021 to introduce legislation pertaining to 2021 Community Development Block Grant budget. That's it, right? Okay.
So at that meeting.
But at the same time, I got that.
At that meeting, there may be the need
If I'm not mistaken,
to approve.
if I'm not mistaken, I thought public hearings were just scheduled.
I believe they normally are.
Yeah, they're just put on a schedule, right?
Right.
Mrs. Miller?
Yeah.
Mrs. Miller, I think this is kind of backwards. They're asking, the planning department is asking for a public hearing on May 3rd. We normally don't even have to vote on that.
Right.
I think next week, or that they need a special rules committee meeting. So you have the public hearing, normally you have the public hearing, and then you bring it out of committee, and then we ask all the questions of the breakdowns and everything of that sort. So I think maybe the public hearing would be May 3rd, and then possibly a special rules committee to introduce this piece of legislation that we're having a public hearing for on May 3rd. I don't know, maybe that's the way it should be done.
No, you're correct. Nina,
Absolutely.
you're correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because you don't normally make an announcement you're having a public hearing, they just do that. So I think that has to, because of a timely matter, and then that's when the breakdown. That's because I remember last year they were talking about indigent people and things of that sort. That's where that breakdown comes down once it's in the committee after the public hearing.
I think that might have happened here is that it's just perhaps just with a change and so forth, is that with Lori coming in and Trevor coming in and just a change that we might just not have gotten that taught correctly. But the public hearing is just typically added to the agenda and scheduled, and then I think Nina's 100% correct. There's a request for a rules committee schedule. Then that request for the adoption of the budget would come in, So I think we're just a little, because of a lot of new folks, just got us a little mixed up, including me.
So to clarify, it would be a rules meeting next week where we would have the public hearing, call for it, read it at committee of the whole so that we could vote on it on the 10th.
Okay. So tonight, we don't have any requests for legislation at all.
Correct.
Correct.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
just for clarification from Mr. Hunt, so council should expect something other than Appendix A as the explanation for the City of Barberton fiscal year 2021 CDBG budget.
So there's a difference between the, and just so you know, we will provide more, but there's a difference between the 5-year capital plan and then the yearly allocation. But yes, you'll get more than appendix. So we have to generally allot money to different categories and share that with HUD.
Okay, generally what we receive is a much more detailed breakdown. That's all I'm saying.
Do we have to call for a special meeting for next week? No.
No, you don't have to call it. We'll just put it on the agenda.
Schedule? Okay.
Yep.
Well, do we have any other matters of discussion for rules?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So, Director Hunt, we can expect the breakdown sometime this week to hit our emails to take a look over before the meeting?
I will work with Justin Halter to try to get that to you, yes.
Did the Planning Commission have that breakdown?
You saw Appendix A.
So they had exactly what we have.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's just what I was trying to make clear here. Thank you.
Do we have any other matters of discussion? Or could I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll
Mr.
second that,
Heidi.
sir.
Mr. Jaber, all in favor?
Yes, sir.
Aye.
We're adjourned at 6:37.
Okay, thanks. Next up is City Utilities with Mrs. Colbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call to order the City Utilities meeting. This is Monday, April 26th. We're all virtual. I have everyone listed that's here. We have no requests for legislation. We do have pending legislation, the ordinance number 38-2021, titled Enter into Contract with Burgess and Nipple Wolf Creek Dam. And that's the ordinance authorizing the mayor as designee to enter into a professional engineering services contract in an amount not to exceed $49,400 for the Wolf Creek Dam inspection, additional services for the determination of probable maximum flood elevation project, and declaring an emergency. Do I have any comments on that legislation? We'll be voting on that tonight. Hearing none, do we have any miscellaneous discussions for utilities? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion made by Carla DeBevick.
And I'll second it, Joyce.
Seconded by Carol Fry. We are adjourned at 6:39.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Finance and Personnel and Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is 6:39 on Monday, April the 26th, 2021. I have all guests listed for the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. We are meeting virtual. All of the members of the committee are present, as well as all council members, and as I said, guests that are present. We have no new requests for legislation this evening. We do have pending legislation. Tonight, we will have the second reading for ordinance number 28-2021, titled Norton Water Sewer Jet Agreement. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement between the city of Barberton and the city of Norton, extending the current joint economic development district agreement. Are there any comments on that? Hearing none, I'll go on to the next ordinance that's on the agenda for this evening, and that is ordinance number 37-2021, titled Amending Ordinance number 129-2019, Employees Not Included in Non-Bargaining Pay Grades. An ordinance amending ordinance number 129-2019, Employees Not Included in Non-Bargaining Pay Grades, in order to increase the pay scale to reflect the raise in minimum wage beginning January 1st, 2021, and declaring an emergency. We all received the new legislation with the new numbers for the different positions, and the minimum wage was only raised by 10 cents. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this piece of legislation? And I want to say I can't see everyone, so if somebody does have a question and I can't see your hand, just please ask to speak. Okay, hearing none, I'll go on to the third piece of legislation that's on the agenda for this evening. It is ordinance number 40-2021, titled Appropriation Fire Department, an ordinance appropriating $24,741.28 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the fire department capital budget of the FEMA fund to purchase additional emergency communication equipment and declaring an emergency. This piece of legislation was referred to finance from safety. Any questions or comments about this piece of legislation? No? Okay. Does anyone have any miscellaneous items that they would like to discuss regarding finance and personnel? I see no hand. Oh, I'm sorry.
Right, I may.
Yes,
just want
Jeremy.
To give everyone a heads up that this Thursday, I do have a webinar on the American Rescue Plan.
Okay.
Hopefully maybe some guidance comes out of that. I'm not holding my breath because the U.S. Treasury, I still haven't heard anything from the U.S. Treasury issuing guidance, but I do have a webinar. If they do clarify anything, I will share it with council.
Okay, thank you. I was going to share that I did receive an email from the mayor regarding the meeting that was to take place this Wednesday, and it has been canceled due to the fact that we don't have more guidance on this. But he did tell me that we did receive notice that all recipients should ensure that their DUNs and SAM numbers are valid, as well as ensuring that all payment information and EIN information is available. And this has been completed by the city. Next Tuesday, the mayor has a call with Summit County. So hopefully there will be some information early next week. And as always, if you have any questions for the mayor, please email him. Does anybody else have any other miscellaneous discussion items for finance and personnel?
Mrs. Fry, I do.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. DeVebic, I'm sorry. Go ahead and speak.
Mr. Hunt, I just was curious. I'm happy to hear that we had a meeting this evening with a new potential business. I'm just curious how it went.
Are you asking for the name of the business?
No, not at all. I'm just asking how it went. I know that may be not for you to give me.
Yeah, we're exploring different options with the business, but I would be reluctant to share that business with you at this time. But we can chat off record if you have specific questions.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff.
Second.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Medges, and we are adjourned at 6:45 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our committee meetings. Does anybody need a break before we go into legislation? Okay, we'll go right into it. This is a regular legislative meeting of the Barberton City Council. Today is Monday, April 26, 2021. It is 6:46 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by invocation by yours truly. Just wait a minute, we'll get the flag up.
The city systems are backing up. It takes forever.
Okay, we'll just get started. All right, here we go. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity of bringing us together to face the issues and concerns of our city. Grant us the guidance and unite and share the wisdom we need to become the best community we can be, and to promote more bipartisan cooperation for a healthier system in our community and our country. Please safeguard our brave men and women who protect us at home and abroad. We ask that you work through us and strengthen our hearts and minds in making positive decisions as they come before us. Amen. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Angela.
Here.
Mrs. Colbert. Here. Mrs. Zebevic.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Okay, Council Rule 103 states that regular and committee of the whole meetings shall be at 7:30 p.m. Since we are starting earlier, we need to invoke Council Rule 702. Do I have a motion for this? Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we invoke Council Rule 702 and Council Rule 103.
Thank you. And Mr. Heide.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to invoke 702.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Heide to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting on Monday, April 12th, 2021, as presented.
Thank you. And Mr. Heide.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second that motion to approve the minutes of the regular legislative session on Monday, April 12th, 2021, as presented.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Heide to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, April 12th, 2021, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Minutes are adopted. Okay, petitions and claims. Matters requested.
They've all been sent out.
Thank you. And citizens addressing council.
We have none today.
Thank you. First reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 5, 2021, presented by Mrs. DeBevick. Foundation grant request, smoke detector program. An ordinance approving the submission of grant application to the Barberton Community Foundation in the amount of $910 for the smoke detector program and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
And Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. DeBevick's motion for suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick, second by Mr. Greer to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Greer.
Yes.
Mrs. Fry.
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Jaber.
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn.
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 35, 2021.
Thank you. And Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. DeBevick's motion for adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick, second by Mr. Greer to adopt ordinance number 35, 2021. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
What did you say?
Mrs. Coburn.
Yes.
If you guys have iPads, you're going to have to mute them until it's your turn to talk. The feedback's incredible. Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Jaber? Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Greer.
Yes.
Resolution 36, 2021, sponsored by Mrs. DeBevick. Title, A Commendation, Officer Steve Coburn. A resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton to and give public recognition to Officer Steve Coburn for his courageous act of heroism on March 24th, 2021.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
And Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. DeBevick's motion for suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Greer to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Tabor.
Yeah.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of Resolution number 36, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. DeBevick's motion for adoption.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick, second by Mr. Greer to adopt Resolution number 36, 2021. Are there any remarks? Please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Ordinance 37, 2021, presented by Mrs. Fry, amending Ordinance 129-2019. Employees not included in non-bargaining pay grades. An ordinance amending Ordinance number 129-2019. Employees not included in non-bargaining pay grades in order to increase the pay scale to reflect a raise in minimum wage beginning January 1st, 2021, and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, and Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Fry, second by Mrs. DeBevick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 37-2021.
Thank you, and Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry, second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt ordinance number 37, 2021. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Yes.
Ordinance 38, 2021, presented by Mrs. Coburn. Title, enter into contract, Burgess and Nipple, Wolf Creek Dam. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a professional engineering services contract with Burgess and Nipple, the amount not to exceed $49,400 for the Wolf Creek Dam inspection. Additional services for the determination of probable maximum flood, PMF evaluation project, and declaring an emergency elevation project.
Motion to suspend. Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second Mrs. Coburn's motion to suspend.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Coburn and second by Mrs. Fry to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff.
Yes.
Motion to adopt. Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 38, 2021.
Thank you. And Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second Mrs. Coburn's motion to adopt ordinance number 38-2021.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Coburn, second by Mrs. Fry to adopt ordinance number 38, 2021. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela.
Yes.
Ordinance 39, 2021, presented by Mrs. DeBevick. Title, enter into contract Tim Lally Chevrolet Incorporated. An ordinance authorizing the city of Barberton to enter into a contract with Tim Lally Chevrolet Incorporated in the amount of $105,806 for the purchase of 2 Chevy Tahoe SUVs and 1 Chevy Silverado truck and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. DeVevick's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick, second by Mr. Greer to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mr. Greer.
Yes.
Motion to adopt. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 39, 2021.
Thank you. And Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mrs. DeBevick's motion for adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Greer to adopt ordinance number 39, 2021. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber, Mr. Jaber,
Mr. Jaber.
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
okay. Ordinance 40, 2021, presented by Mrs. Fry and Mrs. DeBevick, title Appropriation, Fire Department. An ordinance appropriating $24,741.28 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the fire department capital budget of the FEMA fund to purchase additional emergency communication equipment and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend. Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry and second by Mrs. DeBevick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Motion to adopt. Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 40-2021.
Thank you. And Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Fry's motion on adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Fry and second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt ordinance number 40-2020. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on the adoption.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
and Mr. Heidig.
Yes.
This ends the first readings.
Second reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 28/2021 presented by Mrs. Fry. Title: Norton Watershed Sewer Jet Agreement. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement between the city of Barberton and extending the joint development agreement. This is the second readings.
Third reading of ordinances and resolutions.
There are none.
Appointments.
We have none.
Miscellaneous and unfinished business.
We have a liquor license, a transfer of the license from Darlene Martha LLC, 7074 14th Street Northwest, first floor, Barberton, Ohio, to the Slovene Independent Society home at the same address, but the second floor and basement bowling area, Barberton, Ohio. It's a transfer class D1, D2, and D3. I sent out emails and I've received no objections at all.
Okay. The mayor's not here. Is there anybody else who would do some communications for him? Okay.
I got a few notes from the mayor.
Okay, go for it.
All right. Mayor would like to thank everyone who participated in this past weekend's Cleanup Barberton Day. There were many volunteers and groups working together to beautify the community. Several years ago, the mayor put together an Adopt a Road program for organizations and businesses alike to keep efforts like this past weekend moving throughout the year. If a business or organization wants to adopt a road, please reach out to Mayor Judge or contact the mayor's office, and we'll get back to you. There have been many changes on the COVID front. The mayor reached out to the health department concerning the canceling of using the county fairgrounds for a period as a vaccination clinic and having that clinic moved to Barberton. The health department was working on a program while J&J was canceled, but now it's been renewed. So they are moving forward with the use of J&J vaccine. Clinics are still moving forward and restrictions continue to be lifted. We remain in a state of emergency as we continue to see numbers fluctuate. The average number of cases in Summit County over the past 7 days has gone down from 106 to 78 cases this past week on average. You guys touched on this a little bit earlier, but the American Rescue Plan, right now the first step is for all recipients to ensure their DUNS and SAM numbers. The DUNS number is just a 9-digit identifier for businesses. The SAM number is a system for award management. Those have to be in place for you to receive any type of the funds. Making sure those are valid and then ensuring all payment and information with EIN numbers is all available and ready to go. The city's completed all these things, so we're just awaiting the guidance right now. Continue to work with the Treasury. I know Jeremy said he's going to do a webinar. Council members continue discussing and work through Councilwoman Fry with ideas. As soon as we have some guidance, hopefully we can have some continued discussion. Several months ago, a moratorium was placed on various types of businesses in town. This included Dollar General type stores. An article in the Akron Beacon Journal from April 19th, 2021 spotlighted the city of Canton and this topic. It also pointed out that many cities, including Toledo, Cleveland, North Royalton, Akron, and many others have placed restrictions on these types of businesses for the time being. It may not be an issue if the city of Barberton didn't already have 4 of these businesses in town. So that is strictly just an update from the mayor. We'll be sending out, I mentioned this earlier, the mayor's planning on sending out an update on the skate park this week, so more to come on that. And the health board meeting for this Wednesday has been canceled. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Anything else from the good of the body? Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say that we were going to discuss ideas for the American Rescue Plan at the end of each meeting. However, due to the fact that we don't have any new guidelines, and I have not heard from anyone this week, I don't know if the mayor has or not, I don't think that's really necessary unless somebody has a question, which I probably cannot answer because, like I said, we don't have the guidelines. Does anyone have a question or a comment or an idea? I can't put your hand, so please speak up if you have something to say.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes,
did you meet last Wednesday after we met on Monday?
we have not had a meeting since the first meeting.
Okay.
We have never
you.
met again.
Okay,
So
thank you.
thank you. There's really nothing to report. And as I said, any ideas that were emailed to me, I've printed them off and I have a folder that I'm keeping with ideas to add to the ideas that other members of the committee have submitted. And as we both said, any idea is a good idea until we find out, how the funds can be used. So if anyone has any suggestions, please send me an email via city email and I'll print it off and make sure it is put in the file. And also when we finally do have a meeting, I will update everyone on what is being done. And if we have guidelines, I'll update you on those as well.
Thank you. Mrs. Fry, one more comment.
Yes.
This might be a suggestion. Maybe I can get in touch with Mr. Flaker, but has anyone reached out to Rob Portman, from what I understand, he has met with several area mayors, and he is on the committee that is developing the guidelines. And I believe he's meeting via Zoom. And I'm just was curious if anyone had reached out to him to maybe get a meeting or help us understand the guidelines a little closer.
I know that Bill is the mayor is in contact with Summit County executives and other mayors throughout the state. The comment that you made about Rob Portman, our representative, I don't know whether or not he has reached out to him. However, do you know that, Jeremy, or does anyone in this room know whether or not they have touched base about possible guidelines?
I'm not sure if the mayor has spoke to Rob Portman or not yet regarding that. I have not. So that's all I know right now at this time.
Yes, at this time, it's really, we know nothing more than what we have already communicated to everyone on council. So
well, I want to add that we have a hometown kid there working with Mr. Portman, and I do know that he has been meeting virtually with a lot of mayors from different cities. So Mr. Flaker, maybe I'll get in touch with you tomorrow and send you some information, and maybe that might assist us.
Yeah, just shoot it over to me in an email. That way I can reach out.
Awesome. Thank you.
okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, I pass.
Excuse me. Anything else from the good of the body?
Mr. President?
Mr. Graber, go ahead.
This is a question for you. Are we ever going back to council chambers? I've seen other departments and other cities taking council back to chambers, and a couple of our meetings and other commission council. Are we going back?
As soon as the numbers go down a little bit, but I'm not going into the chambers until the numbers in this county go down.
Is that your decision or is that from the state?
No, that's my decision.
Your decision right now to stay out of the council chambers, correct?
Yep, at least for at least a couple weeks.
Okay.
Mrs. Fry?
You're muted.
Okay.
I have a question for all of council, and it's in conjunction with what Mr. Jaber has just brought up. How many of our council members have been fully vaccinated and have quarantined for the number of weeks that you need to quarantine in order for it to be safe?
I'm sorry, is that I view that, I don't think that's a question that's kind of I don't feel comfortable.
A HIPAA question?
No, I just
That's
don't
a
feel
violation,
answering
right?
that.
For sure.
Well, personally, I don't want to go back until people are vaccinated.
Mrs. Fry,
Yes.
I know as an employer, and you and the rest of council are not employees, I understand that. Asking an employer, I'm talking about employer-employee, I can't answer about council. Asking an employee whether or not they've been vaccinated is not a violation of HIPAA. If you ask them why not, or follow-up questions, that could be a violation. And we can only ask it as an employer if it is a business necessity to do so. So I just wanted to say that it's not necessarily a violation of HIPAA, asking whether or not they've had a vaccine.
Thank you very much for weighing in on that.
I'm not comfortable with answering any health questions like that.
Mrs. Angeloff?
Yes, I just have one question. Mr. Medges,
yes.
How many of the iPads have been picked up? Does all of council have their iPads that everybody wanted so badly?
I have not picked up my iPad. I've spoken with Mr. Witten. Unfortunately, I work until 5 o'clock. I work 8 to 5, 5 days a week. So unless he wants to stay over, and I have the means at home to not have the iPad. So for that reason, I haven't been concerned about it.
Mrs. Angeloff, there are 4 people. There are 4 iPads still here.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I have one thing. It's, last week, nobody turned in their committee meeting minutes. Okay, that is a council procedure. Lori needs those so she can file them, and she will copy them and give you the copy. She needs to keep the original. So even if she's not here, you can stick those in her mailbox. Okay, but that's a council procedure and needs to be done. Okay. Okay, anything else? With nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Heidick. Mr. DeBevick.
He's outside.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you. And how about Mrs. Heidick? Mr. Heidick.
I will second that motion.
Okay, it was moved by Mr. DeBevick and second by Mr. Heidick that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned at 7:23.
Carla, I got your letter.
Good night, all.
What letter is that?
The one from Mr. Persley.
Oh, did he email it to you?
No, it was in my packet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I for sure don't have it, but it's okay. He said he messaged me in the chat and said that he emailed it to me. So
I know, but I just found it in my packet.
Okay, no big deal. I'm not losing sleep over it.
I know.
Actually, what happened was I had to do an amendment on your thing because of a late thing in it. It just probably got shifted out when I switched them.
I'm not worried about it. Absolutely not worried about it.
Okay, thank you.
Not a big deal. Have a good week.
You guys all